Thank you, everyone, for joining. I was on mute. Okay, let's try this again. Thank you, everyone, for joining. This is the voices of a Black man. And we're having technical difficulties today, and you can see I'm flustered. So let me try this one more time for everybody. This is what life brings us, right? Life brings us these days sometimes. Welcome to the Voices of a Black Man. I'm CK James, and today is Saturday, which means that today is Roundtable Discussion Day. This is where we bring back the speakers of the week to come sit down together to discuss commonalities and differences through their lenses, but as a whole. So today we have A.M. Williams, Linwood Long Jr., Brian McNeil, Velton Showell, and Ed Clark will probably pop in somewhere here. I know that we're dealing with a little bit of internet issues today. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you, Cheryl? How you doing, fellas?
Fantastic. It's a beautiful day.
Wonderful.
Excellent. Thanks for asking.
Wonderful. All right. I am doing well. I heard someone ask how I was doing. I'm doing well now. We're here. Hey, let's get this party started. Let's get it going. It's been that kind of week. I don't know about for you guys, but guess what? We still persevere, right? We still move on.
That's right.
That's exactly where I want to start today as we start the discussion off. I want to start the discussion off with perseverance. What does that word mean to you, and how does it apply to your life? Everyone don't go at one time.
I'll start. I think right now, I look at it as just getting through this mess that we're in right now. I mean, it's going to take perseverance. So that means being able to work with each other, maintain a positive attitude, staying focused on what you need to do for yourself and your family, but still be able to keep in mind the larger world around us, and like I said, just remaining focused and dedicated.
Very interesting. I'm happy that Brother Ed says, especially considering the time that we're in right now, being persevering. It's hard enough to keep going in our world anyway when you're bombarded by negativity. We all, on this, the kind of guys that will be on this kind of conversation, we work very, very hard to maintain our positivity. We study, we learn, we talk to each other. We try very hard to be positive. And that's hard enough by itself because the negative stuff comes unbidden. But when you start adding other factors, pandemic, racial injustice, massive and high unemployment, that makes it even more challenging. Now, we're going to persevere through it because that's what we do. But what it does is make you tired. Unless you have an on-purpose way of recharging yourself, rejuvenating yourself, like regularly, because life is kicking our butts right now. But we can still win, but if we just got to work to win, that's all.
You know,
I'd have to say, my apologies.
I can hear you. Yeah, that's fine.
I was just going to say, I would have to, on the coattails of what Brian just mentioned, I think as a people, we are naturally more resilient than what we get ourselves credit for. It's like we got massive amounts of training in this, whether they be inadvertent or advertent. We've had massive experiences where we've had to persevere and press through and be resilient, and not just be resilient, but maybe like to have a greater sense of buoyancy, the ability to bounce back very quickly. I think that's super important for us in this time. And I do believe that it requires a regimen. I think when we get so focused on striving and trying to break through, and we don't understand how we need to regiment ourselves to do what it is that we're doing, that's when the fatigue sets in, and it creates more problems than what it's worth.
Well, what I was going to say, we have to understand life is cyclical. You know, there's always a problem. There's either a problem that you just came out of, a problem that you're in the middle of, or a problem that's around the corner waiting for you. This situation that we're in today is not unique. There's always been a challenge, or as I like to call it, an area of opportunity. The most important thing that we have to remember is attitude is everything. It's how you enter into a situation, how you exist while you're there, and what you do about it to turn that situation around. That's really what perseverance is, that you persevere when you're in the valley. Take advantage of the lessons that you're learning, because when you get to the top of the mountain, what keeps you up there are the lessons that you learned when you were in the valley of transformation or transgression. So we have to make sure that we understand what we're dealing with, figure out how to deal with it so that we can push through it, persevere through it, get to the top, and then once we get there, maintain that until the next problem arises, because it's around the corner waiting for us. We just don't know what it is yet.
I guess to put a book in, what I deem as perseverance is the overarching story of Black people in the world. Our history begins, way before the hands of time have actually been created in regards of information about who we are as a people. And we've had to persevere as a culture, as a heritage, for thousands of years in our ability to create new ways of how we eat, down to the music that we play and we create, to the athleticism that we exude, down to the intellect that a lot of things are not being, quite frankly, shared amongst the people. We have a lot of highly intelligent Black people in this world, and oftentimes we have to persevere just to get an opportunity to speak. If you look at the definition of persevere, it's to be persistent in the midst of difficult times. And persistent is the thing that I think is where we have to rely on, that it's got to be, as the brother mentioned, a regimen. It's got to be something we do over and over and over again. And Velton said it best. We're going to go through some valleys to get to the mountain, but you best believe there is going to be a time where you're going to have to come off that mountain to get to the next peak. And you're going to have to go through some peaks, and you're going to have to go through some more valleys to get to the next peak. So there is trouble on the horizon, but you have to be prepared to be willing to work through it all in a way that no man or no woman can ever judge.
So where does that ethic come from, to persevere?
If I may, I believe it comes from, it's inbred in us. We've been figuring this out since Pharaoh. Just keeping it honest. The culture of where we came from as a people, we've been tending the fields for a long time. We've been making scraps out of nothing for a long time. We have been making our children greater than we were. We have allowed our ancestors' work to not be in vain, no matter how much they try to depreciate it. It's inbred in us. It started back when we were learning how to till the land without the tools that we ultimately put the ingenuity behind to make. We've learned how to persevere because it's in our DNA. I just believe it's part of the Black folks' DNA.
I agree with that, but I want to take it back even further than that. We are the descendants of kings, and we are the descendants of royalty, first and foremost. So our history started long before we ever reached the shores of this country. When we reached the shores of this country, the next hurdle or the next issue was, we are, again, the descendants of the slaves that would not die. So it is ingrained in our, as you said, our DNA, that we know how to persevere. And As the old African proverb says, you ask the question, what's going to make the difference for us? It takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to deal with transgressions that are put in front of us. What we have to start doing more of are things like what we're doing today, coming together and collaborate, talk through issues in an educated, peaceful form, so that we cannot challenge. We want to challenge each other, but we want to challenge each other in a direction, in a way that moves both of us or all of us forward. And that's really the key, as I see it, to us navigating the seas of transformation, the transgressions that we have, and being able to persevere until we get to that next plateau, looking for that next peak in the mountain, as we talked about.
I think Belton makes a great point. I wanted to digress, if I could, Belton, back to the original statement and defining perseverance, where you talked about the valley of transgression or transformation. One of the biggest things that you notice a lot that takes place in business is individuals' pursuit of scaling. And they'll get to a certain place and then everything falls apart. Or, things consistently fall apart over and over and over again. And I think a lot of it has to do with the inability to learn from the lessons in the valley of transgression. We don't learn how to pivot in prosperity. We learn how to pivot in transgression. We learn how to make changes and adjustments when, as Lynn would put it, when you have no access to the tools, when you don't have the things that you need to be able to do what it is that you need to do, when you learn how to be creative with what you have in your hand, it just makes a world of difference. So then when you're making that upward trend, it becomes so much more simpler to do, because adversity is nothing new. It's nothing new. Like, we encountered that, we understand what that looks like, and we're better equipped to make the pivot, so to speak, in business and life, period.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Anyone else before I move on?
I want to pick up on why we persevere and what's persevere to us. A couple of places I want to go. I really appreciate what our brothers have been saying here, but all of us, Belton mentioned it a second ago, we're the descendants of amazing people. We're descendants of slaves that wouldn't die. Every single one of the black people in America right now, our ancestors lived through 300 years of slavery and 100+ years of Jim Crow period where we had no rights. So that's 400 years right there where we had no rights, but we found a way to live. We found a way to still find some laughter, still bring up another generation for us to get here. So we're all already the descendants of amazing survivors already. And as far as how to persevere now, especially with so much stuff going on, I think it's very, very challenging to persevere in our own silos and our own chairs. I think it's easier for us to persevere when we think about the people that are looking at us, the people that we're responsible for. We can work harder for the sake of our families. We can work harder for the sake of our communities. When we know that we're setting the example for some young person, we do tend to persevere longer and harder because we owe it to the world. If you're blessed with a modicum of gift, skills, and talents, you owe it to the world to do the very best you can with what you have. And I think that does cause us all to persevere more.
One of the things that Brian just talked about is historically, we have come through so much as a people. But let's talk about that for a minute, because historically, as we came through this, we had our own communities that we took care of. You know, one of the things, CK, that you and I talked about when I spoke or during the week is that one of the greatest things that ever happened to us was one of the most difficult things that ever happened to us, and that was desegregation. And I say that because during desegregation, we lost as much as we gained. We lost our sense of community, and all of the Black businesses that, because they had to be there, were in our communities, and we turned over our dollar in our community numerous times before it left. Nowadays, our communities are suffering because if you go into many of them, the business that exists is a hair salon, and we don't even have the rights to sell the hair that's there, a barbershop, multiple liquor stores, and churches. Gone are the small Black business entrepreneurs in brick and mortar businesses. Now the new generation, everything is highly technological, but the question is, how are we collaborating and how are we building community wealth amongst our people based on our entrepreneurial endeavors to make sure that we do business with each other, we help each other grow, and we turn over our dollars in our community before we release them and set the right example for the next generation that is evolving and coming, because a lot of times the next generation, they don't want to be preached to. They want to see the essence of your labor. They want to learn because they are raring to go to make their own fortunes and to make their own futures.
You know, that brings up a good question, again, in light of where we are right now, Velton. You talk about those businesses or whatever. They may not even have an opportunity to exist in this post-corona world. And I'm just wondering, have we all been thinking about what that's going to look like if we can't take our dollars and turn it into a small mom and pop that eventually grows into a chain of restaurants, for example? Mm-hmm. Because restaurants, 30% of restaurants are probably not going to reopen after, you know, this round of corona. What do we do as Black folks to think about the next kinds of businesses that would allow us to have that kind of community built? You know what I mean? You know, I mean, if I can't open that business, that small business, I can't open a Black movie theater in our neighborhood. I can't do those kind of things. What do we see that we're going to be doing to be able to bring people along? Because if I'm sitting here at my computer and I do everything here by myself or whatever, how do I engage other people? I guess it's a rhetorical question to the group. You know, what does that look like?
It's interesting, Ed, because I have a friend who has a restaurant. And prior to COVID-19, the restaurant was doing well, but it struggled from time to time. During the pandemic, what's happened is his takeout business has soared. His takeout business is now doing more volume than he ever did with the come-in, sit-down business. So he's changed his business model and enriched his plateau so that he's got the kitchen staff, but he doesn't have the front of the house staff. He's doing the volume. He's putting his dollars and marketing push into the internet and technologically reaching out to people to grow his business. So I guess what I was saying is we have to collectively figure out how to change, adjust, or adapt our businesses to the new normal. Because you're right, we're not going to go back to the way we were before. Think about the barbershop. As a Black man, the barbershop is where we existed and where we got all of our information. Stop it, man. That's where you went and got your head shaved the right way. Everybody can sell.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
That was our communal time to share information. What's going to may happen in the new normal is barbers going to be making house calls because you're not going to be going to somebody else's shop. You're going to be, I know down here in South Florida, I'm going to get my hair cut on the patio. So how do I do that so that I keep in touch with the other brothers that I usually share with? Do we do a Zoom time?
Let me get in there.
While we're in the barbershop.
Let me get in there. I'm gonna take a little bit different view of my brother Velton, okay? Because in the old days, doctors used to make house calls, and they could see, 8 clients a day, 8, 9, 10 people a day making house calls. When they stopped doing that, and they made everyone come to one location, now they can see 90 people a day or 100. Now, my income as well has gone up during the lockdown because I do a lot more online classes where everyone has to come in on my schedule, and I do a whole lot more group stuff instead of just the individual one-on-one coaching. The one-on-one coaching I do is tantamount to me making a house call. Okay, now I'm going to keep on doing some one-on-ones because that's the bread and butter of my business. But more group stuff feeds us better. And that barber, that massage therapist who's not going out like that anymore, they're going to learn, the ones that prosper, they're going to learn how to embrace technology with what they do. That barber, in addition to being a professional barber cutting hair himself, he can give some tutorials online about what to do in between times when you visit with the professional barber. He can tell you what to do. He can give classes on it, separate himself as a subject matter expert. That massage therapist can talk about what you can do in between, teaching something. I think it's going to be our new economy. I don't think we'll ever go back to us before.
Well, Brian, I'm going to need that barber to do the tutorial because I've been trying to cut my own hair. And I ain't even going to
I'm not a barber.
Hey, listen, Ed, that steady hand it's a learned thing, boy. That steady hand is that is a gift and a talent. Don't get it twisted, because everybody can't get this right here came from trial and error. I like to add something. I like to take everything that Brian and Velton has used and give you a quick corporate spin on it, because what we are tasked with for Cisco and in IT is this word transformation. And then they add digital in front of it. Digital transformation. Well, what does that mean? It means that the way that they used to do business yesterday will not supply them long-term success doing it the way they've been doing it for the past 20 to 30, 40 years. Businesses that are transforming are going to be relevant. They're not going to be stagnant. They're going to think outside the box. They're going to push the limits of bringing in new technologies, new social media abilities, doing things that will make them more attractive to the consumer today. I mean, studies have shown that 20% of the market, 30% of the retail in person is deaded. 30% of your walking in the store business is no more. That 30% has now gone to online purchases. So what does that mean? That means that Black people need to be brown people, white people. People have to transform their mind and cannot stay in the stagnation of doing it the way they've been doing it for the past 20, 30 years. We cannot continue to push against the wall of change. We have to bust through the wall of change by being change agents. One thing that I think hinders us, Ed, to answer your question, is we are reluctant because we have given ourselves a negative stigma in our own cultures about supporting Black business. We need to dead that right now because we are missing out on some of the most outstanding, talented individuals in the world because of their color and the stigma. We're not helping them transform. Our Black businesses, our Black consumers, we all are transforming in a way that we never thought we had to. COVID has forced us all to learn how to transform. Yes, it starts with Zoom. Yes, it starts with WebEx. Yes, it starts with Google Talk. Whatever you need to do to advertise your business, create a YouTube blog, start doing your own blog spot, create a very quick personal web page that talks about who you are, some of your endeavors. Implore some methods that you can still go out is you can still go out and shake a hand, or elbow bump and give somebody a business card. We can't sit back anymore and just think that business is going to come to us. We have to go out and get it, and then when we get it, we have to share the love elsewhere. You've got to show other people. You've got to show other people how to fish. We've got to get back to teaching our businesses and our entrepreneurs and everyone else how to fish. That's my 2 cents on that.
Well, it's interesting. And hold on 1 second, AM. I'm just going to interject something, because we are now a global economy, as you said. Absolutely. My friend, Dr. George Fraser, says this. He says, our goal is to buy black, but sell to everybody.
Yeah. That's good, Dr. Fraser.
I literally just wanted to say that if we really take a look at this thing for what it is, this is like the next phase of disruptive innovation. We've been hearing about disruptive innovation this whole millennium.
Mm-hmm.
This whole millennium, we've been hearing about disruptive innovation, companies going smaller, companies becoming more lean so that they can be more agile, people having to learn how to provide value differently so that they can be able to stay relevant in a marketplace with ever-changing needs, with customers with ever-changing needs. I'm very interested to get my peers, colleagues on this, because what I believe that's most important, based upon what Linwood just said, we need Black leadership more than ever. It's the expertise of individuals like us who understand the importance of being able to pivot and keep an organization moving forward in the right direction. We need that more. We need to be able to bring that to our communities, because it's not so much that there is the absence of an idea as much as it is there is not the strategic plan of execution to sustain or to lift that idea or to keep it afloat and have it sustain or even scale to higher heights. I believe personally, this is why Black leadership is more prevalent now than in any given point of time in history. I'd be interested in hearing what you gentlemen had to say.
Hey, I think that's I'm sorry, Ed, my mind races when I hear that type of question. So please just entertain me here for 30 seconds in this thought. And please, you guys, feel free to correct me here, but in our culture, when we were growing up, the people with the leadership titles growing up, not just, let's say the early 60s, 70s, to grow up as a Black person in the community, your leadership started in the church. That's where, leaders had an opportunity to really show, and, we were very title driven. And then as segregation came, desegregation came and equality became a little bit more willing, then we started seeing us move outside of the church into CIO, ownership, and senior level, as well as some roles, but there's still not a lot of us. What I feel that we have to do, one of the things that's holding us back from these leadership roles is not the want, is the A, guidance, is B, the undeniable truth that we can do it. Like, we have to take the limits off of ourselves. We tend to, not all, because, I'm talking to obviously some very brilliant Black people at this point. One thing that we will do is we'll put limits on our ability to do the next thing. And our culture should not do that. One of the first people to make a car and have his own car dealership was a brother named C.R. Patterson out of Greenbelt, Ohio. He took the limits off where people were telling him he couldn't create a car because he was Black. He told them, the devil is a lie. I'm going to create a car, and it's going to be just as popular as Ford. And what did Ford do? They saw his business, so they decided to buy from him. We have to let ourselves be brilliant in our own areas and then take the limits off. Set your bar high. Hey, what's the worst thing you can do for setting the bar high and trying to reach it? Please, someone tell me.
There is none, but there's two things that I take out of what you're saying and what AM said. Number one, you're absolutely right. The only limitations in life are the limitations that you put on yourself. but the environment in which you grow up or exist in today's cultural environment in our neighborhood, it has limited many people, not everybody, because we still have people who emerge and do great things, but people like us, those people who have had the opportunity to be successful, we have to reach back into those communities and be the example for those young up-and-coming people. The other thing that Lynn would talk about from the technology standpoint is, one of the things that I'm really interested in is our current educational system preparing our youth for the businesses and the wave of the future? I would say no.
No, I'll agree with you. I'm going to give you a qualified no on that. It's not.
That's a qualified no.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So then we also have another task, another obligation, another responsibility, which is to change that narrative so that we are now creating those brilliant minds that can take advantage of the new normal.
Yeah, I wanted to add one other thing. Martin Luther King said he was concerned about dangerous optimism, and what he meant was that he thought that if young people could go into the restaurant and go to the movie and maybe live in the neighborhood, they would forget about the struggle. They would be overly optimistic that white people would also allow them to ascend to leadership and all that, and then they would become comfortable in things, in having the trappings of wealth and prosperity, but not actually have it because you don't have the real freedom that they were trying to achieve. And that's why he makes this pivot and starts talking about the economy and the Vietnam War and those kind of things, because he said he wanted to prepare leaders to lead the entirety of, your existence. Right? To be concerned about peace and war, to be concerned about the economy, be concerned about voting rights, all those things all together. And the concern was that, we may leave the desire to right the wrongs if, like I said, if we could live in a certain neighborhood. So one of the problems that I see and why I don't think we have the type of leadership that we need is a lot of people are comfortable. They're extremely comfortable. They can take a vacation. They go down to the DR. They take a cruise. They live in a decent neighborhood, whatever. And they don't see the need to go reach back and bring some people up, bring young people along or whatever, because their life is just fine. And that's really not our real spirit. Black folks are usually pretty giving and want to bring everybody along, but we've learned some bad negative habits from the religion of capitalism, because I believe capitalism is a religious theory, and the white people have sort of just prayed to money and not dealt with people's spirituality really, where Black folks used to do that. So I guess a long-winded way of saying that we have to convince young folks or people who don't, think that they can be leaders, that leadership is an important thing to be. A leader is an important thing to be. It's as important to be a leader as it is to be rich. We try to ascend to affluence, which is what capitalists have taught us to do. That affluence is the only thing, not the leadership part. And I think that's what Martin was talking about when he was talking about dangerous optimism.
May I add a couple of 2 cents on this too, please? This is a very interesting subject, and it's kind of branched out into a couple of areas. One thing I want to talk about, Ed, that you just shared was about leadership starting at the youth. Our growing up, I'm 45 years old. I know I look like I'm 25. Thank you. Growing up, when I was 45 years old, I know that there was an interest. No, it wasn't interest. We were placed into positions into which we were forced to have leadership opportunities. outside of the church. We were given those opportunities, and those things now have become a back seat, kind of like our education system has taken a back seat to teaching us the technology that you talked about, Belton, as well as our own history. You know, do you know that the average child doesn't know that the richest king in history was an African king by the name of Mansa Musa? Most of them don't know that. They don't know it because the education system won't teach that. Most of them don't know that we have more. They think that billionaires come from Michael Jordan and Oprah Winfrey. But, you know, Ed, you work for a black billionaire that kids don't really have a clue about.
They have no idea who he is. Yeah.
They have no idea because his name is David Stewart. They think he's white. You know, like we need to do a better job of educating our kids. But now we have to get back to a place of we can't give them the choice of giving them leadership training. We have to start funneling them through leadership opportunities in the church, out the church. Anytime there's an opportunity, we've got to level the playing field, back to the way when King was talking about it, and then our parents put us in position to be able to do these opportunities where we can talk to each other. But most importantly, it came from a learned, taught, and sometimes forced opportunities to get up in front of people and talk. My child today is the shyest young lady in the world. I cannot get her to talk to me in the household. My child stays upstairs 15 hours a day, and the other 3 she comes down, she eats, she watches TV, she reads, and she go back upstairs. But I have tried. But what I'm learning is, that's the dynamics of today. But when given the opportunity, I have put her in every leadership training that you can imagine, because at some point she's gonna have to get up in front of a public people in an interview on social media, and you've got to be able to push yourself to lead someone through action, lead someone through inspiration of words, but most importantly, lead someone through your ability to show that you can do it. We've got to get out of these rowboats. We've got to stop thinking that we are just rowing. We need to start thinking outside the world of being satisfied. And I think that was the last thing I wanted to share was we cannot be satisfied with the rowboat mentality. And I'm not talking about financial. I'm talking dream, think big. Just dream and think big. Our leaders today do not allow us to think small. Obama never gave us to think small. He thought big, and that's what we need to get back to.
Well, I want to piggyback on what you said, Linwood, because here's the thing. There's no financial literacy. That's exactly the reason why we're the largest consumer group, but we're not the largest producing group. Okay, that is not in education. I'm working on my dissertation now to get my doctorate degree. It's nowhere in the education structure. Financial literacy is something that we have to take personal responsibility and teach our own how to do that. We have to teach them the principles of leverage. We have to teach them how to make money work for them, how to utilize what they have to be able to get them further and project them further in life. Leadership opportunities are a great way to be able to do that. But, you know, again, it's one of the greatest commentaries for me when I'm watching investment shows and watching some of the analysts that I like to follow, and 15-year-old kids are talking, calling in and talking about their stock. And, you know, when I talk to our kids, they're trying to tell me what the latest, you know, new song is or what that is. It's not about financial literacy. There's no emphasis on that. And I believe when we're talking about leadership, we have to include that component. And whether a person builds wealth for themselves, it really has to be generational. We got to think like Japanese people do. They don't do anything for 10 or 20 years. They do everything 100 years out. We got to start planning like that to create legacies.
That's right.
Create some things and put some things in place that will allow, you know, our youth to continue to advance rather than Every generation shouldn't have to start from the same level. We should be able to build off of our shoulders. We should be it should be able to build off of it. But, you know, we don't understand literacy. Therefore, we're always struggling because we're taught to be consumers. We're taught, we've mastered that. But like you talked about the brother who created the car, or look how many people have created clothes, who started manufacturing companies. Ed talked about the IT company that, you know, he's a part of. We need more of that. We need more financial literacy. I believe that's the elephant in the room as it pertains to us and how we position ourselves to recreate our own economy, reposition ourselves the moves that we need to do in society to reposition us to do more of what it is that we're after, because whether we like it or not, you're not going to do anything without money. You can't do a thing. If you don't have that ability to make those moves, you're lost. And if you're not in a position of power, then you're in a position where you have to follow. And we're just too talented of a group of people to always be following. We should be leading. And the way I believe we get back to leading is through financial literacy. That's my point.
Good place there. I want to go back to a couple of things that you guys said. I was writing my notes over here. I was like, oh, this is good stuff. I think it was Linwood that said, if we teach others how to fish. I wanted to bring something in from a speaker that spoke a couple weeks ago, Ryan Ray. He brought up a different point, and it adds on to what you said, Linwood. Not subtract from it. But he said, yes, we have to teach people how to fish, but I think it goes back to what AM just said. But if we teach them how to own the pond, because if we're just fishing, someone else can tell us, no, it's closed today. You can't eat today. But if you own the pond, then not only are you able to fish when you want to, now you can definitely teach others how to fish and then own their own pond at the same time. So I wanted to throw that out there because that was something that was a perspective that was thrown out a couple weeks ago, and I definitely grabbed that perspective and want to pass that perspective on. The other thing you guys talked about really quickly, and I'm trying to wrap up a couple of things here, and I want to just say to our viewers, thank you for tuning in to the Voices of Black Man. Those who were at the beginning, we had Brian McNeil here. He couldn't stay with us throughout the duration, but we thank him for his time. And the other one was, you talked about leaders. When you talked about leaders, I have a question there that I have not seemed to have gotten answered yet. I'm getting good ideas, but when we talk about leaders, where are they? We talk about training and teaching and things of that nature, but where are they? Where do we go get them from? Where do we find them?
I'll take a stab at it real quick, because I think sometimes people also have to be willing to be led too, right? And I think a lot of times, I run into brothers like all the ones on this call, and they could be a leader of anything. They could do whatever they want to, but some folks aren't willing to follow right now. I think, a lot of times people don't come to be led until either one, things get bad enough, right? And they feel like they got to get led out of the valley, or they have to sublimate their egos. So this is back to being human, right? Humans sometimes don't like to be told that their baby's ugly, they're not doing right. I could sit around and criticize folks for the way they live their life, but they think they're doing just fine, because you can't tell me what I'm going to do, and I don't need a leader. But at this exact moment, when we need strong leaders, because of people in DC who I won't mention their name, are not leading us in the right direction. People like John Lewis and C.T. Vivian are dying, and Reverend Lawson is 91 years old, and Barack Obama is having to come out of retirement and come off the bench because other people aren't there. It's because it's critical right now. And some people wait until it's critical, until you have to have a leader. There are people out there who want leaders, but I'm just saying that sometimes we got to remember too that we are human beings, and sometimes we don't do things in our own best interest. And that's what I fear a lot with, especially in our community, that sometimes we do things that aren't in our best interest. We just got to be honest about it, and then be prepared to help, when the time comes. And like I said, I think Obama decided he needed to strip off the warm-ups and get on the court again, because nobody else was stepping up.
I love what you said, Ed, and I think there's a couple of things. Number one, first of all, to be a leader, you first have to be a servant. And you have to have a servant mentality. You can't go into an environment expecting to immediately be accepted as an authority, an authoritative figure, a leader. You have to go in, first of all, humble and be willing to serve. Then once people recognize your service, they will recognize your leadership ability. That's number one. Number two, from our standpoint, you talk about teaching people how to buy the pond. What we also have to make sure that we do not only buy the pond, but then be willing to share the knowledge that allowed us to buy that pond. What has happened, we've been trained since slavery, and I'll never forget this, because I heard this as a child: I got mine, you get yours. Instead of, I got mine, here's how I did it. Let me help you get yours so that we both have, and we can spread that knowledge and that wealth amongst our community. That's where we unlock that door. That's where the collaboration now is more than talk. It's actually something that's taking action or creating action. We have an abundance of leaders. The question is, are they willing to don that servant robe and step into that role first to win the following of those people who need to be led? Because these young people today, and this is something that I say all the time, people lose interest in what you teach unless you practice what you preach.
That's very Jesse Jackson of you, Belton, but very honest. I've been blessed with working with kids for the last 6 years as a youth pastor in a small community, right? 30 kids in a church. It gives you a lot of perspective because you get to see every talent. You get to also see every deficiency, but more importantly, you get to see and hear the voice of the children and how they're doing things today. And I just wanted to really just bring out the statement that Shelton made is kids nowadays are action driven. You can do a lot of bumping of gums, but until they see you doing and living, because it was amazing to me how kids are so observant. We think they're not watching. Today, them jokers are watching. They're watching from a different perspective too. Because we used to watch our parents. We'll sit upstairs while they sat downstairs, and we were watching from the top of the steps. Now, these kids today are watching you on Facebook. They're watching you on Instagram. They're watching you on whatever little private Snapchat you have. They're watching you on your TikTok. These kids are building up their views and thoughts, and they're watching you on Twitter, by the way. So they're building up all these areas in which they're watching you to see now. I see your story. Now I'm going to see if you're really acting and living it. So we have to take off this facade of like, A, be true to who you are. B, don't forget that if we're going to create a leadership, if we're going to create these things if we're going to bring together these gaps that we have that are sometimes glaring in our children, from the way that we were raised we cannot forget that how they're watching is different, but please always be mindful that they are watching. They are watching how you serve. They're watching how you talk to each other. They're watching how you engage with each brother and sister, people that are outside of your race. They're watching how you save money. They're watching how you spend money. They're watching what you're spending your time doing. Are you smoking cigars in the back, or are you inside helping me read and study for my final? are blessed to be men that have insight and have been given tools to show others how to do this thing. In my opinion, I could be wrong, but I believe I'm talking to some outstanding young Black men here. And I believe that you have done a great job with teaching others. Now the masses becomes, how do we teach others to teach someone else? Teach one, reach one, get one at a time. To answer your question, CK, you said, where are the leaders? The leaders right now are in our high schools and middle schools who need to be cultivated. Because our generation, we have to provide them the path, but we've got to start working on them now, because they're going to be the ones that's going to hold our future. When I'm 65, 75, 85, 95, and 100, good Lord willing, the creek don't rise, I want to know that the kids that I help raise, the kids that I help inspire, the kids that are going to eventually wipe my mouth and make sure I'm not sweating too much, those kids are going to be the ones that are going to be leading. And they don't have to be president, but they cannot stand on the sidelines. We've got to get our kids off the sidelines. So the next leaders of today and tomorrow are starting right at home, right in our schools, middle school and high school. That's where they are, because we've already cooked it. We're already in the kitchen. The sauce is going, So we've got to show our kids the recipes that made us successful.
It's interesting. I think I'm the senior citizen of the groups, right? Because I know I got more days behind me than I got ahead of me. But, one of the things that the keys to what you just said, and you talked about leadership. A lot of times there are a lot of tools out there that we can pull down and utilize. We don't always have to reinvent the wheel for our kids. And I'll give you, for instance, there's an organization here in Miami called the Overtown Children and Youth Coalition. And they brought in 15 leaders from different youth organizations. And they wanted to do a leadership academy. So I do leadership, and I did part of the academy. But the other thing that I said to them, I said, what we need to look at doing, I'm a member of Toastmasters, is to create a gavel club. Create a gavel club inside of the organization. Now, is all of the curriculum written by a Black person? No, it's not. Doesn't have to be. But we can teach it to our future leaders of tomorrow so that, number one, they can articulate in front of a group. Number two, they have the leadership skills necessary to work with other people and collaborate in efforts and initiatives to make a difference. But we're giving them the foundation. And a lot of times, that's what really they need, is the foundation, the fundamental skills. And they'll take it and run with it.
I want to. Go ahead, AM.
No, I literally just wanted to coattail on what my brothers were just saying. I think it comes down to literally just 2 words, 3 points. Belton talked about the dynamic of service. I do believe that next group of leaders are our young people. They are our young people, but we have got to get young understanding what it means to be in service. Because if you're going to lead, you got to know how to serve people. Number
That's
2,
right.
they got to learn how to be accountable. They got to learn how to be accountable. You got to learn how to be accountable. You got to be accountable to your parents, your peers. And, when we learn accountability and we learn how to be of service, learn 2 major hallmark leadership. And I was just dealing with a client yesterday who was very successful in real estate and investing. And she was talking about her struggles with where she is now. And I said, well, what do you think is different now than it was then? She said, I believe I got the chance to be successful before somebody told me I couldn't. And I think that's so important. We have to get to our young people and tell them that they're capable, who they are capable of being before life they can't. We have to
Huge.
there speak to them and show who they are.
I love it.
Yeah, AM, you're breaking out just a little bit.
Teach and accountability. Yeah, but just accountability and service. If we can do more of that, we're winning.
And I think the real issue, AM, you hit the nail on the head, is what we teach them. Because it has been proven theoretically that every child is operating at the genius level till the age of 4. At the age of 4, they've been told so many times, you can't do this, color inside of the lines, don't do that, don't do this. They lose that genius. Things like prejudice and racial inequality is taught. Things like bad manners, Lynn said it, they're watching you. They didn't develop bad manners because it's something that was just triggered in their mind. They watched adults exhibit those bad habits, those bad manners, those bad actions. And they said, well, they got away with it. Why can't we? Why can't I?
Yep.
So we have to close the narrative.
This is good stuff. I have 2 more topics that I want to cover with you guys and get you out of here. The first one is, as Black men, when you look at policies, laws, rules, how have they played against family?
Well, I think, I'm not an expert on it, but take the welfare system. The way the welfare system was designed, it was for women who were single mothers. So therefore, the father of the children could not live at the residence or reside there if they were going to get this check. And so immediately that tore the family apart. You don't have that father figure in the house. Now, not to say that every father figure that was there was doing what they were supposed to do, and that's why the family was on welfare, but it just tore apart the dynamics of the family. And it's perpetuated itself over time. Now, laws have been adjusted or changed, but I think that was one that really hurt the essence of the family unit in a lot of our communities.
Yeah, I think America, again, I go back to America thinks that capitalism is their religion. We don't have a social bent in the United States. It's a lot of individualism or whatever. So the overall policy of the government most of the time is to do things for business, right? It's focused so when you get a large tax cut, like the tax cuts that happened immediately when the Republicans took over, all those tax cuts were top heavy towards business. And with the thinking that those businesses then were then going to turn around and trickle that down. George Bush Sr. said it best. He said it was voodoo economics. It is never going to happen. And so the policies that we have, even in this current crisis, should we give $600 extra per week to keep people from completely, imploding? Should we put a moratorium on rent? Or should we even actually help people pay their rent? The amount of money that they've transferred to insurance companies and drug companies far exceeds anything they could have given to people. They could have literally paid everybody's rent and mortgage over the last 3 or 4 months with the same money that they transferred to these large pharmaceutical corporations. But that impacts Black people even worse when you're already struggling at the bottom, or you're already in those jobs that are going away that we talked about at the beginning of this.
That's right.
So the policies they affect poor white people too, but they have a more detrimental effect on Black folks who are already struggling, who already had a higher unemployment rate, who already had trouble, making ends meet and paying the rent and stuff. Our public policy just doesn't make any sense. I worked a lot in Scandinavia where the welfare state, whatever you want to call it, does not allow for anybody to fall through, period. And in some places in Scandinavia, they have a guaranteed income, right? Or they make, you don't pay for hospital visits. You don't, any of that kind of stuff. But all the policies of America, we're constantly arguing about, should you have universal health care? That's the easiest one to do. And we won't do it, and it has a more detrimental effect on Black folks who maybe have more health conditions, right? And I think that's why they argue over it, is because just yesterday it was revealed there was a memo within the White House. Jared Kushner made a decision not to do anything about COVID because he said that it would affect New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and minority populations more. That was the policy of the White House. And then when it got out of control and now the president shows up occasionally with a mask on, I'm supposed to clap and appreciate him for encouraging people to wear a mask? No, it's too late now. You've already revealed how you really feel about it. So and then again, we get stepped on the worst because we're already on the bottom trying to get up. Get off my soapbox.
I think Ed, that's what we deem, or what we talk about amongst the kids that we work with. We have a phrase called real talk, and that is what we have been doing here today. But I think several points that you and Velton just made are very just point blank real talk. One thing that is also very, in my opinion, is very true is privilege. Policies are not made for those who are not living a privileged lifestyle. I don't care what the world says. There is a defined privilege over white versus Black. The reason that the Obamacare was blown up because it was created to help all, but it was with the focus of protecting the African American community, the Black community first. Because we work most of the frontline jobs. We, with the other brown people, we work for frontline jobs. We are, because we are not given the type of privilege for other jobs. You know how hard it is for Black people at times in corporate America to advance because they don't know they don't know nobody. They have to come in and work hard. They have to come in and over exceed. We have to come in and preach our excellence, but yet somebody could come out of college because of their daddy or their uncle or their grandmama or their auntie or their aunt or their mother and get privileged jobs, privileged opportunities, privileged promotions, privileged raises, all of those things that are now trickling down to policies. Most policies are not created with us in mind. They still have this mentality of a third of a citizen. If I'm looking at right now, I'm looking at 4 grown men and a woman. We are full people. I'm not a third of a person. I never have been. But the policies are created to make me have to understand that I am not part of the privilege. Even the white who struggle, who are in the bottom half with us, even they have privilege that we don't have. They can walk in the hospital. They can get seen and won't be given the riot act or turned away. Most of the bodies that they had sitting in the morgue or sitting in New York and now Texas and these other places where they're hotspots, they're mostly Black and brown people. They're just discarded. They make a choice. We can save the Black or we can save the other. Who do you think they're going to choose? Because the policies have shown that our value is depreciated. So I do not believe that the policies are here to support family. I think they're policies that are creating more divisiveness in our ability to come together just on a political level. And then I further believe that the policies are created to keep us down when it comes to an equal playing field for healthcare, financial literacy, aptitude, as well as the education system in general. And the struggling Black communities and counties in the state of North Carolina, and I can imagine anywhere across the world, they don't get the same level of education or materials that you get from the privileged communities and counties that we all drive through and live in.
Absolutely.
So, any other comments on that before?
I have to I still have to go back to two things. We have to get back to entrepreneurship, and we have to get back to financial literacy. Of course, none of this stuff was for us. We were not in the room. We were not
That's
in the
right.
room making these policies. We were not there. It was not for us. It's never been for us. But if we look throughout our history, in countless times when it wasn't for us, we created economic systems that we could not only survive in, but thrive in. And when financial literacy was put at the forefront, when entrepreneurship was put in the forefront, it didn't matter. It didn't matter when other people were eating out of trash cans. We were thriving. It has to get back to understanding the power we have as a people, rather than looking at how we don't have this or what's not there. And I'm looking at this through my lenses. I'm looking at it through the lens of saying there are a ton of things that the deck is stacked against us. However, if I'm going to create something dynamic in life, I have to look at what I have to work for me. When I had to do 10 years in my bed, I still built a multiple six-figure business. I didn't look and see what they were giving me and what they didn't give me. I still went back to school and got several degrees. I didn't look at what the world was doing. I didn't look at what, I didn't even consider it. I honestly, I don't even pay any attention to it, because what I understand is that what people want more than anything else is to keep the illusion of elusive superiority in place. When applied knowledge is the most powerful thing that we can have working for us.
Thank you for that, AM. I told you I had one more question, and then we're going to get into the wrap up itself. And that question really quickly is, we talked about leadership within the community, but you guys just expressed how there are a lot of tables that we don't even have access to. We're not in the room, or we don't have access to them. So how important are allies as we're looking to continue to grow and move forward and advance as a community, as a culture, number one? And then I'm just going to throw in there, how important are allies and how important is voting?
Well, look, let me hit that real quick, because I talk about it every week. I mean, I've been on the radio for 30 years, and every week I talk about it. I'll talk about voting first. I never end any show without talking about the need to vote. And I try to explain to people that there are elections every year. I mean, don't think about it in terms of just the presidential election. There is you can vote for dog catcher in some communities still. If that's on the ballot where you are, you have to participate in that. When people tell me they don't vote or I don't want to hear you, because you don't have anything to say to me. I mean, you control a lot of your destiny, because you may be in a community where you actually could have control, right? You could choose who the police chief is inadvertently by choosing the people on your city council, right? So,
Right.
So voting first. I just can't tell you how important that is. But the whole aspect of allies, though, is also important. And I think Linwood probably knows this. We deal with people from all over the world, and we deal with a lot of people from South Asia because of IT, right? And from China. And one of the things that you understand quickly is those folks don't care who you are. They care that the money gets transferred when the transaction is done. And so you have to be able to talk to any and everybody. I know we have to deal with our folks too, but if we created some allies, say amongst the South Asian community, you go down the road from where I am right now to a town called Morrisville. They are the most populous South Asian community in America. And we should be trying to build a bridge to them. And I know a lot of people over there, and I've been trying to make some inroads there, because I think that's going to help us in the long run, because they come from a situation of oppression in the government and those kind of things. They kind of understand what's going on. And if you can build allies with those folks, then, they know how to raise money too. and they know how to, put things together. And it would not hurt us to have some allies amongst the South Asians and particularly amongst Hispanic folks. So I think it's critically important because we can't go it alone. Mm-hmm. I mean, the reality is I've been to 48 other 50 states, and most of the places I go, and I'm in some small town in Montana, it ain't nobody look like me. Nobody. So I can assure you they're not sensitive to, what we're talking about right now. They don't care. But if I know that I have some allies back home, I can make my life back home better. I can't change somebody in Montana who doesn't care anything at all about Black folks. So that's my 2 cents worth. We got to build bridges to other people, and we got to vote always, every time, no excuses.
Absolutely. From a political standpoint, the only way that you can change your situation is to vote. And Ed was very, very eloquent in his comment. You can determine who the police chief is. We talk about police violence and police brutality. We can determine who is in charge of that police force, but we got to vote. We can determine who is in Congress representing us, but we have to vote. The presidential election is once every 4 years, but as Ed said, there's a different vote every year. And we have to, number one, educate the voters to understand the dynamics of the process. A lot of times they don't understand the total scope of the process. So the lack of knowledge gives them an attitude that it really doesn't matter, when it really matters more than a lot of the other things that they're doing. And as far as alliances and allegiances, we can't talk out of both sides of our mouth. We talk about it's a global economy, but we don't need alliances or allegiances. I'd rather do business with somebody that I know, like, and trust, regardless of their color, to be able to build on that platform that I've established. Not just from a business perspective, but even from a community perspective. Those alliances, those allegiances, those relationships permeate through everything. It's not just a superficial relationship because of this. Sometimes it is, but sometimes that relationship allows us to step into another arena, allows us to spread our wealth or our alliance throughout multiple communities, especially multiple parts of the Black community. It also talked about different parts. I've lived in six different parts of the country over the years, and I have found good people everywhere. I found bad people everywhere, but I found good people everywhere, and not all of them look like me. Many of them did, but not all of them did. The question is, again, are you willing to put yourself out there and take the first step? There's a thing in business that says the first person that gives wins. And I really believe that if you're willing to take a chance, don't be a fool. If you step out there and it's not the right environment, you pull back. But be willing to explore, be willing to extend the hand so that the alliance, the allegiance, the relationship can be cultivated.
I'll say some things here in short. I vote, and I take my child with me to vote. I created a voting for our kids to vote on who they want to be their next leaders. I've given them the structure from president down to the parliamentarian. And I have not tried to limit their knowledge about voting. I vote at my HOA. I vote at my favorite restaurant. I vote, if you let me, on which gas I can pump in my car. I think the value of voting is so big that we need to take the opportunity to show that action of voting and the power behind it. I do have a say-so. No matter how much you try to diminish me, I have a say-so, and my vote counts. Now, we cannot allow the rhetoric of people who are in position to eliminate us or hinder us from voting. It's bottom line. And then allies. I think if I could be spiritual for one moment, I think I shared this with CK earlier in the week. Regardless of what faith you serve, when you get to this place of final rest, there will be no color. There's no color. If you're a follower of Christ, Christ doesn't just serve the black. He doesn't just serve the white. He doesn't serve the Hispanic. You're a Christ follower. There's no color. If you build allies, you have to build allies that align to your vision, your mission, as well as your goals. Allies should be what they are, an accompaniment to the greater mission. So that means I can learn from someone that doesn't look like me, and they can learn from someone that don't look like them. As long as we're following the same mission, as long as we have the same path forward, I rely on relationships, period. Because the resounding word for me will always be, love thy neighbor as I love thyself. I cannot help, I got to have an ally to be able to further understand things that I don't know. And they may not be black. So why not leverage the intellect and the knowledge as well as the wisdom of people that don't look like me? I'm not so big. I'm James Brown all day. I'm black and I'm proud, but I'm not black, proud, and ignorant. I'm gonna go out and get the knowledge that I need, and if it comes from a person that's white, brown, South Asian, or even polka dot, and I don't think they make them anymore. But doggone it, if they got knowledge and wisdom that I can glean from, and we can be a part of the same mission, then I want to be aligned to them. So allies is very important. Some of the greatest wars were ended because of people becoming allies. You couldn't do it on your own. World War I and II took a conglomeration of countries to come together to be allies, to beat the enemy.
No, these brothers, they pretty much nailed it. This is the only thing I'd like to say, and I just want to put some gravity in this conversation. I don't want to hear any black people come to me and stress the importance of Black Lives Matter, and then you won't vote. Don't tell me. Keep the t-shirt. Keep the t-shirt, keep the stands, keep all that conversation, standing out in the street. If you won't vote, you just turned around and conflicted your whole self. You just tore your whole argument all to pieces. I just, that is the most powerful thing we have as a culture, as citizens of this country, human beings, is the ability to vote. And as far as allies go, it just, like, how will you participate and be effective in a global economy without allies? Can you learn how to be effective servicing Asian markets without allies? How can you be effective at servicing, people all over the world without allies? We have to have them. There's just no way we can make it without them.
Thank you, gentlemen. This conversation, this roundtable discussion that we've had today has been amazing. And I thank each and every one of you for coming back on and spending some of your Saturday with me today. Now, in true The Voices of a Black Man's fashion, we do wrap-ups at the end to let each one of you, whatever's on your heart, whatever you desire to say, to be able to say it before we wrap up. So I'm going to put myself on mute like I did all this week and give you all the opportunity to speak. I'm going on mute.
Well, I guess I'll start, and I'll just say, you guys, this has been an amazing show. please make sure you stay locked in to Sherelle every week to get this information, get it, listen to it over and over and over and over again. It's been a pleasure sitting with my esteemed colleagues. I've enjoyed it. It's been a very fruitful discussion and a pleasant one because you don't have the opportunity to do these quite often. Thank you.
I'd like to say that this has been not only a very humbling opportunity for me to speak to brothers of like-mindedness, but to see the power, to see the leadership, to hear about it, but to also see it in motion is a beautiful thing. And I thank you for putting this together, Sherelle. What I would like to send off to my final statement would be the only person that limits your ability to be great is you. We have to continue to inspire to live beyond the means of the status quo. Not just because that's what we've been created, but because of our kingdom and queendom heritage, we have to strive for moving beyond the status quo. And that starts with taking the opportunity to enact on your rights, to be vocal about change, to be a change agent, but also being a person of action, and doing it all with a sense of community and love. Those things will continue to move the needle in a way that that the world cannot deny. And lastly, being the younger guy here, I think, maybe, I'm just saying.
You're probably right.
I have gleaned.
Ain't gonna let it go. Just ain't gonna let it go.
You say 45, and the next time I see 45, there'll be a 1 in front of it.
Hey, and I hope that I'm there to see at that party, man, because believe me, that's a beautiful thing. But I pray that the kids across the world will have an opportunity, if they're able to look back in the archives of life and will see a conversation like this of men and women together speaking about things that we have to do to empower. My prayer is that this will be not a point of emphasis of legacy, but is a small donation back to paying it forward to what was done for me. So I'm grateful to sit with these brothers, with you, CK, with those that have come before us, just to have an opportunity to have a voice here for a person that's as young and as I am. I'm just extremely, extremely grateful for this opportunity. Thank you.
Lord have mercy. I'll tell you, I got up this morning and I was excited about having the opportunity to share with this group. And as we got started, the excitement did not plateau. It actually got higher and higher and higher because of just the knowledge, the inspirational messages, the words of encouragement that have been shared this morning by everybody who's been on this call. This is the start of something. Now, it's not the beginning, but it's the start of something new. It's the start of 6 new relationships. And success in our community is not a sprint, it's a marathon. We've got a lot of work to do. We've done a lot of work. We've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. And it's things like this that you put together, CK, that are essential to our achieving those long-range goals, those long-term goals, those 100-year goals that were talked about, like the way that the Chinese look at things. But we have to have those people that are willing to step up, step forward, and get involved. So putting together something like this, listening to the knowledge of all of these brothers that have talked this morning, to listen and talk to you this week, has been the height of my week. And I hope that the few nuggets of encouragement and words of inspiration that I've been able to add to the group have been something that has touched someone. Because at the end of the day, it's not about what we want to say, but it's about what people need to hear. And the last thing I'll say is one of my mentors says, when we get into these situations, there are 3 things people want to know. Who are you? What do you have? And why should they care? Well, we've told them who we are. We told them what we have. And the reason that they should care is unless we come together as a village, as a community, we can never achieve the goals that we've set for ourselves.
Well, I can't tell you how thankful I've been to be a part of this. I wasn't sure what it was going to be when I was asked, but I don't mind talking, so that's never been a problem. But I do have to be honest. I had been suffering from a little bit of a depression for a while now, thinking about a lot of the questions that have been raised. I wasn't sure where leaders were going to come from. I wasn't sure if we were going to make it as a people. I wasn't sure that people would rise up whenever a new challenge came along, or whether I wasn't confident in young people. I had a lot of doubt about just things in general, just life, right? And then you get a group of people together and you start talking, you realize that, hey, you got brothers out here that you could depend on, that you could talk to, that you could call on, that are actually doing okay, and that they're doing the same thing as you, probably having the same questions and doubts and everything else, and trying to reach people. So when I hear somebody say, they're talking to the youth and they got a youth group, they're coaching business folks or whatever, then that makes me feel a lot better. Because a lot of times we sit in isolation and don't realize that some positive things are going on around us, and we'll internalize all the negative that we see. So you turn on the TV and then you think the whole world's about to blow up. But then you talk to you brothers and then you realize that, no, we got some people in the army that we can win this, not only the battle, but we can win the war. We just got to stick with it. So to all the guys, I mean, I just incredible amount of knowledge and optimism and all the things I needed to hear. So from a selfish standpoint, you guys have made my week, by being so upfront about yourselves and the things you're trying to do and what you believe, and because sometimes you think there's nobody out there but you. So, and I think we need to prop each other up. And then of course, CK. I mean, the whole idea to allow people just to talk. Like I said, I've been in the talk business for a long time as a talk show host, and a lot of people come with not always the good motive or whatever, and as a host, you got to try to steer the conversation or whatever. You struck the right balance of being involved and then sitting back and letting people talk. And sometimes some talk show hosts, they want it to be about them. And I can tell genuinely you want it to be about Black men, which isn't always the case. People don't want to hear from Black men. And it's a forum that, I really appreciate. So with that, like I said, I hopefully I'm going to be talking to all you brothers some more. And we know where each other is. And if you need something, that I can help you with, by all means, you got a new friend. So.
TK, I'd like to say one thing I failed to say. It's something that I've been doing for the last 46 years, and that's just telling my brothers and you, I love you. I don't have to know your story, but the one thing that we have to do is show more bromance between our brothers, but most importantly, this enormous amount of love for each other. So if no one has told you I love you today, please let me be the first to tell you that I love you. And just in case someone has, know that when I say I love you, I do mean it from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Linwood, for that. Thank you so much to each one of you for just sharing your heart, sharing your wisdom, sharing your experiences. I've said it to each one of you individually. I've wrote it to you in emails as we set up the times to talk. I've said it to you personally. And let me just say it again. I am honored and humbled for each and every one of you that decided to take the challenge and say, yes, I want to tell my story, and then go further to say, and not only am I going to tell my story, but I want to be with other brothers, to be around the table and have deeper discussions about how we can help, how we can lead, and the changes that we can make in the world to impact everyone. So I thank each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart. Now, this platform, the Voices of a Black Man, is just that. It's a platform for Black men to be seen and heard. You know, for over hundreds and hundreds of years in society, Black men have been put into boxes, stereotypical boxes. Usually they come in the form of, number one, being silent, which then equates to absence, or number two, being angry, which equates to being aggressive. And it was to dispel the myth that all Black men are not the same. They are merely humans. They're merely men who happen to be Black. And because of that, they come from different backgrounds, experiences, and have their own dreams and aspirations. And we heard from them today. We've heard from them for the last 30 days. So I want to thank the viewers. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today to our roundtable discussion. Is what we do on Saturdays is wrap everything up by bringing our speakers back from the week to sit down and have a deep dive. Now, the first part was a little easy. It was just for you to listen. That's it. Just to listen. Listen to what they had to say. Listen to what they saw and how things were through their lens. The second part is on you. The second part is now for you to take what you've heard, let it sit with inside of your soul, and discover any biases that you may or may not know that are there. What actions do you take next? That is on you. We can only provide you the information. We can only give you merely suggestions through their lens. Now you have to look through your lens and figure out what are the next steps for you. It takes me changing me and you changing you first before we can impact the family, the community, and the world. I'm CK James, and I thank you all for being here today. Thank you so much, and I'll see you later. Take care.